Hello and welcome to Beyond the Screen, the podcast that delves into the world of horror, cinema and television, its stories, its impact and what makes it so captivating. I'm Emma Arneil and today's episode is a special one. My co-host Robert Taylor is joining me to talk about The Woman in Black. He's currently working on his book Sound Haunting, which explores the depths of this chilling classic, so there's no one better to guide us through its haunting legacy. Join us as we discuss the timeless terror of The Woman in Black.
Robert, the 1989 version of The Woman in Black is clearly it's a huge part of your history, your childhood. What was it about this adaptation and what's your history with it? What was it that drew you to it?
Yes, well, it started really quietly. It was trailed on the lead up to Christmas 1989. I remember the trailers for this ghost story appearing on screens after, I think, programmes like London's Burning and Poirot, the ITV productions of the time. And I remember towards the end of, between 9 and 10 o'clock, you would get a trailer that would show this production, The Woman in Black. And I'd grown up with horror. We would discuss that in the first episode that we'd done, a bit about how we first encountered horror, and this was very much the next stage because I hadn't seen a ghost story before. So I'd seen vampires, I'd seen creatures, I'd seen werewolves, I've seen Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, House of Wax, all these classics, but I had never actually seen a ghost story on screen, and I was a bit intrigued by it. And I remember the trailers I haven't seen since, I'm sure they're in an archive somewhere. I would love to see them again. But the trailers I haven't seen, and since they were broadcast, and they were just snippets. They were like misty moors, screaming, the protagonist running down the stairs to get the axe from the cupboard underneath the stairs. And it was just snippets of dread. And I remember asking if I could sit and watch this. Eventually, I don't think it was immediately apparent when it would be on, but I think eventually it was announced that it would be Christmas Eve, 1989. So I did. I asked and pleaded, and for days and days until my parents gave in and said, right, okay, you can, so long as you get supper, get pajamas on, housecoat on, you can, sit down and watch this. And that's where it started. So it started quietly. And then as the production went on, as the film showed at 25 past 9, I think it started on ITV that night. It became more and more uneasy. Yeah, I think a good way to put it, because and it still tells today. I think anyone sitting down today will see this. That it's directed so well. It's Herbert Wise does this thing where he just builds anticipation and dread from really the start of the film. There's little snippets. There's things that people say, and then they stop, and things are left unsaid. There's just a gradual. There's something wrong here.
That heaviness.
Yeah, Bernard Hepton says on the cab on the way when he's giving Arthur a lift into town from the train station, and Arthur says, I expect to be in and out of Gilmar's house for several days, and Bernard Hepton just quietly says, do you now?
It's a decent enough place, they look after you. Just staying the one night?
No longer. I'm to see to the house, all Mrs. Jabler's things.
Gilmar's house?
I expect to be in and out of there for several days.
Do you now?
And I mean, that line's talked about a lot. I think Mark Gatiss loves that line. I know that because we chatted about it briefly once. It's just a fantastic line. And I think I remember that being the first line to think, okay, there's the sign of things to come. And then, anyone that knows the production, and let's just say if you haven't seen it, we probably shouldn't you shouldn't be listening to this right now. Spoilers on these podcasts, but
Yes.
But yeah, it becomes utter terror and devastation and tragedy, and it just doesn't get better. There's no resolve in it at all, and it left me cold that night. I remember feeling, I lived in an old house at that time anyway, so I generally the rooms were cold, but I remember feeling cold and shivering and icy from it, and unable to settle in bed. And the next day, Christmas dinner, I was still thinking about it. It was still there.
Wow.
She was still there. I was just quietly traumatized, I think. So that's how it started. That's where it started for me.
It's quiet trauma.
Yes, very much so. I didn't sleep well for weeks, months. I lived in a 17th century house, which wasn't that dissimilar. And you can look at pictures of it today. It doesn't look dissimilar to your Marsh house, actually.
Oh, wow.
It very much resembles it. And my dad was caretaker at a property in Fife, and we lived on the estate as part of his conditions of the job. That we had accommodation there. So I lived in a house that dated back to the 17th century. So there were staircases that there was 3 flights up. In the first flight would be lit, but beyond that would just be darkness. You look up, the stairs up there that you couldn't actually see because it was so dark, and there was no one up.
So you had like an immersive experience with it. You were
like a virtual reality version of, it was almost like a secret cinema immersive experience or something. It was, and it was quite harrowing at the time. I was too young to see it. I was 10. And it was completely misjudged in terms of my parents allowing me to see it. The thing about it is the whole design of the film is why it scared me so much. There's not a lot that you're exposed to, even as a child watching it during the film, but the way it's built up and then the way that things unravel is so frightening and terrifying that it makes an impression. It feels physical. I spoke to Pauline Moran about that. It's a physical reaction that you get from this fright, this scare that everyone talks about. And at 10, I was too young, too vulnerable to cope with it. So it stayed with me for years, and I wasn't allowed to see it. Again, I was immediately asked to record over it. I taped it on VHS, but I wasn't allowed to watch it again, so I had to tape over it. I think with a James Bond film of that day or something. I remember, watching the wheels go around on the tape and thinking that Women in Blacks are raising, and I don't know, For Your Eyes Only is, being recorded on top of this magnetic tape. It was going slowly in front of my eyes. I lost. I had a feeling I wouldn't see it again for a while.
Wow.
It felt like, I don't know why, and there was no premonition about it, but Women in Black wasn't seen again on television for 4 years, I think. 1994, 5 years. 1994 on Channel 4, they repeated it. And that's the 2 showings it's had on television. That's it. It's never.
Those only had the 2. Wow. So only 2 showings.
Only 2 showings. For a drama that was BAFTA nominated. And quite a large budget for it. Well, at the time it was over £1 million, just over £1 million was the budget of the production, which I don't know, what does that equate to today? Is it like 3, maybe upwards to 3.5, 4 million?
Wow.
So it was, it wasn't, in terms of cinema, it was low budget, but this was a film for television. It is a film. People say it's a TV drama. It's not, it's a film. And it's a film that's been made and produced very much for television, but very much done, in a cinematic way. And that's thanks to Herbert Wise, his sort of masterful direction. If you look at some of the shots that he does, when you're thinking about the fact it was a 16mm camera, thank God it wasn't videotape. Now we can watch it in high definition because it was actually shot in film. But, you think about the limitations of what TV budgets would provide in terms of provision, location, facilities, and the ability to actually have the time to shoot the film like a cinematic film. If you look at the marketplace scene when they're walking through the marketplace in Criff and Gifford, there is, it's just a tracking shot. But there's movement in every part. Every part of that shot that's moving down that street, there's extras in the background. They're doing the stuff, they're the market sellers, they're selling, there's ducks in the background, there's cow, there's everything vibrant and lively about it, which is great because the next scene they're in the churchyard and it's complete silence.
Yes.
It's sound. We'll talk about sound there, or we might talk about sound in a moment or two. That sound design is also incredible. That silence is deafening. Once you leave that marketplace and end up at the churchyard in preparation of Mrs. Drablow's funeral, there's just such a deafening quietness.
So uncomfortable, isn't it? It's just that, yeah.
So
that's
incredible.
Sorry, on you go.
No, I think that I've kind of forgotten the question, but that was the start for me.
That was its very early stages for you. Because we've just mentioned sound, that's probably a perfect kind of segue into talking about Sound Haunting, which is a brilliant title and evokes so much just from those two words. So I'm just going to ask you to share what it focuses on and why sound is so central. We've kind of touched on that a little bit there, but just if you want to kind of give us a deeper dive into that, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Woman in Black is the title character, and she is the physical present apparition. She's the the ghost of this drama, this film. But there are two other ghosts. It's the sound of the pony and trap in the marshes and the screams of the child and the mother drowning in the marshes.
Get quick! Get quick! I'm here on the path. I was coming to meet you. Get quick! Get quick! I can't see you! Where are you?
And there's the voice of the child later on his own, approaching Arthur.
Hello? Hello? It's for you. Where are you? Who are you? Nathaniel?
So these two elements are very much they're relying on sound itself. There's also technology that has been brought into the adaptation. It's not from Susan Hill's material. It's Nigel Kneale who's brought this in. He's brought in the Edison phonograph, which is the sort of turn of the century wax cylinder recording device where you could record your voice and play back music and various things.
This is Arthur Kidd speaking. I'm in Earmarsh House among all Mrs. Drabler's rubbish. This is Arthur Kidd speaking. I'm in Earmarsh House among all Mrs. Traveller's rubbish.
That's used as an exposition device, expertly so, in the film. In fact, some of the most frightening moments come from that Edison phonograph, and nothing really frightening happens. We hear the voice of Mrs. Drablow recounting her diaries, if you like, of staying in the Earmarsh house on her own. And there's a particular line that sticks for me, and I remember it stuck for me as a 10-year-old. When Arthur's listening back to Mrs. Drablow, and it's recounting a night in the Earmarsh house. And then finally she says, that night she did not come till 4 a.m. Then it was bad.
And I must remember to ask Keckwick to bring more of that yellow soap, so useful for washing floors. Last night she did not come until 4 a.m. Then it was bad. A bad night.
It was a bad.
Oh.
And it just gives you absolute shivers, but it tells you that the haunting, it tells you Mrs. Drablow's experience in the house, it tells you a background and a wee bit of the family background that we get to learn later on towards the end of the film, which involves an illegitimate child being born and taken away from his mother, which is the tragedy of the story. But yeah, we get, so Nigel Kneale's, he's brought in this sound device, and if you look at Nigel Kneale's work, and this isn't something I, until very recently, and thanks to great people, Andy Murray, who's Nigel Kneale's biographer, and John Deere, who has done a lot of work on a podcast covering Nigel Kneale's work, as well as bringing back Quatermass to Alexandria Palace, that's the old BBC in London, sort of celebrating Nigel Kneale's work and bringing things back together for his centenary, which was a couple of years ago. Thanks to these guys, and thanks to my awareness opening up beyond this Woman in Black adaptation, I've come to realise that Nigel Kneale's work throughout his entire life has been developed on sound. There's a short story that features sound predominantly as a device. There's a couple of plays that he did for radio. There's one that was lost, and it was John Deere arranged, along with other people, for the centenary, a live reading of this play, which is lost from the BBC archives. Called You Must Listen, and it is about a ghost haunting a telephone.
Oh, wow.
There is elements, and I was fortunate enough to get a chance to speak with Tacey Kneale, who is Nigel Kneale's daughter. And I was talking to her, and I was saying to her that, I was quite unaware of the influence that sound had, and also technology, the interest that Nigel Kneale had in technology, and how that fitted into different societies or different environments. For example, the Edison phonograph, the generator in the adaptation of Woman in Black, Keckwick shows Arthur how to wind up the generator, and he says, Mr. Drablow he was keen on newfangled things, there was a sort of distrust about technology coming into rural communities. So there was an interesting clash, and that was another thing Nigel Kneale did well. He liked to explore the clashes of personalities, how people interacted with each other, and also how communities interacted. In The Woman in Black is a very stark, there's an urban community, there's London, the firm of solicitors, there's, this progressive society, and then Arthur is plunged into this rural society that's very much based within superstition and fear. And the thing is, we construct our own ideas of society to make sense of it. And
yes,
we do that in life today. I think this isn't a new quote. It's often said that Nigel Kneale could see round corners. He could almost see in the future in terms of, where the world was going. And we construct our own ideas of our own narratives sometimes to make sense of our lives, or to justify how we've acted or behaved in a certain way. We'll maybe create a narrative for that. And it's the same with the sort of rural communities. This superstition is based on making sense of life and death and unnatural occurrences or patterns that people have seen in things that they would think has been connected to something that if we step back from might be completely random events, but because that doesn't make sense to us, then we'll create a construct to understand them better. And that's basically the basis of superstition.
Absolutely.
Fireside stories, all these, we kind of, so Nigel Kneale, amazing writer, far underappreciated by me for far too long before, because I was very much, I knew his work through The Woman in Black, and I think the Hammer version of the Quatermass experiment. But beyond that, I didn't know Nigel Kneale at all.
No, I'm not hugely familiar, and it's something that I want to discover. So I'm absolutely enjoying these chats and learning more. It's funny when you were talking about the communities. Do you think that The Woman in Black could at any point be described as folk horror?
There's elements of it. I think. I don't think it's directly folk horror. I think it is within the realms of a ghost story. But there are elements as the outsider coming into a rural community, not being trusted, being
the outsider.
Yeah, being isolated by the locals, not being told the full story. Even Samuel Daly, played by Bernard Hepton, who takes Arthur under his wing almost in a very protective fatherly way, does so in a way that's still at a distance. He doesn't go into describing anything about what this town is frightened of until he has to. There are elements, I would say, in terms of landscape and isolation, and a different world from urban London. I think there's elements there, but more traditionally a ghost story in its tradition.
Absolutely, yeah. So in the writing of and the researching of Sound Haunting, what was the focus of that? You mentioned the three ghosts. Why is it that you think that sound is just so central to the 89 version?
The one sound that I remember is Pauline Moran screeching.
Yes.
Down upon Arthur from the bedroom window. This ghostly figure coming in from the window, really closing in down onto his personal space within his bed. Now, where's the most protective space in your entire world? It's your bed. It's the place you go to sleep at night, and she is there, invading that space with this. It was funny when I speak to Pauline occasionally, and we communicate, but she did the scream down the phone at me. She did the kind of, I just got this thing, I just got this kind of 9-year-old, kind of 10-year-old kind of fear in me again, just because it was her. She and it was on record that it wasn't her, which is completely untrue. Excuse me, but Pauline did do the sound. In fact, she did it live on set to the point that one or two of the technical crew were quite taken aback by the sound, and she talked about producing it from the back of her throat. It's not an outward scream. It's more of a scream that pushes into the back of the throat, and it just produces this. Oh.
It is. It's utterly terrifying, isn't it? It's like a dry scream.
And Pauline's got great vocal. Pauline's done a lot of theatre work, a lot of television work, over between the 70s through to, the early 2000s. And, but before that, she was in a band. She was in a band called the She Trinity in the 60s.
Wow.
The bass guitarist, and she was a singer, and so she, her vocals have they've been trained certainly to get to that moment, I think.
And what a moment! Oh my goodness!
So I think in terms of the sound, that's the one sound that I never forgot. Even in the time that I wasn't able to access the film, I would always hear hear that sound, just, and it just gave me shivers completely all the time, I just, so sound haunting it became to make more sense to me that would be a good title to both appreciate that Nigel Kneale's work is substantive beyond The Woman in Black, but the incorporation of the themes that he seems to revisit appears to find its way into his adaptation of The Woman in Black. And really that's where it comes from. The three separate ghosts and the fact that Nigel Kneale used sound quite a lot throughout his career to create a presence or an atmosphere, a presence of some sort.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I guess the literal, as you just said, that kind of literal, that sound haunted you. The sound of that scream haunted you.
I suppose it did, yeah. I hadn't really thought of it, sort of stepping back like that, but yes, it did. It did for a lot of years. And I said that to Polly, and she said, "Oh, I'm just doing my job," But, but yeah, it's quite something.
Yes, I can imagine hearing it down the phone, because that's just so. There's no, you're watching it on a screen.
She was.
There's a distance.
It was. It was during a conversation. I think we were discussing the fact that someone had recently said that it wasn't her. So I think that's when she, not that I was asking her to, but she just suddenly, it just became, it just happened and it was like, oh my God, I'll get my own private performance of this. It's quite,
that is quite something.
Yeah.
That's, I think probably we should, for anyone who's unfamiliar, although, as Robert had said earlier, if you haven't seen The Woman in Black, please, we urge you to stop listening and go watch it as a matter of urgency, because it is terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying, and there will be spoilers as we move through the rest of the episode.
Set in 1920s England, the story follows Arthur Kidd, a young solicitor sent to the remote coastal town of Crwthyn Gifford to settle the estate of the recently deceased Alice Drablow. Tasked with organising her papers at the eerie Eelmarsh house, a secluded mansion cut off by rising tides, Arthur begins experiencing unsettling events. He repeatedly encounters a spectral figure dressed in black and learns of a tragic local legend surrounding her. As Arthur unravels the truth, he discovers the woman's vengeful spirit is tied to a series of deaths with dire consequences for anyone who crosses her path.
Robert, I would love to hear your description of this version in just a few words. What are the words that are evoked when someone mentions The Woman in Black?
Cold, chilling, and utterly without redemption.
Wow.
So, yeah. I don't know, should I expand on that?
Please do, yeah. I mean, those are incredibly powerful words, so please do.
It's absolutely remorseless. It doesn't help. There's no, very much like a novel, there is no redemption. There is just utter tragedy and devastation, and there's no resolve. So, yeah, I mean, the later Hammer version I like very much in many ways.
So, you're from London, trying to sell Eelmarsh House?
Yes.
You won't find a local buyer. The sooner the house is sold, the sooner people can move on.
Please, don't go back to the house. She's there.
Don't leave yet.
You should have left. You should have gone when we told you to.
You said you have a son. Go home to him.
Don't go chasing shadows, Arthur.
She's always there.
Daniel Radcliffe, especially, who I think sometimes gets quite a hard time for his acting. He's really, a fantastic actor, and he carries a lot of that film, as the roles required, on his own for a good portion of it. So the Hammer version, does a lot of good stuff. I think you see the woman in black far too much.
Yes.
But this thing at the end, this redemption, the idea that Arthur is reunited with his wife in the spirit world doesn't quite gel with me. It's not the book. It's not the, excuse the pun, the spirit of the book. The book is very much about a man losing his entire family at the end. Mm-hmm. And being left to recover with the haunting of that for the rest of his life. The book starts when he's in his 50s and 60s and is told in flashback. Whereas the Hammer version starts with Arthur having already lost his wife.
And he's already haunted. Yeah. He's so traumatized by it. He is so kind of drowning in his grief. It's affecting the relationship with his son. And, so he's already got this.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, because that's really, it's because as much as I don't like the way that narrative went, I don't think it works. If you're going to be faithful to the book, don't mess around with the circumstances that is, the background to your protagonist. But he plays that really well. He's a very depressed character through the entire film. And that fireside scene where, he's told not to go chasing shadows, because he talks about the hope through, as a lot of people did in the Victorian era, they hoped about the afterlife. They went to spiritualists and mediums and relied on being able to talk to their loved ones through mediums. A lot of which, well, depending on what you believe, but certainly there was a lot that were pretty cruel hoaxes and exploitative.
Convinced it's our son speaking through her. You don't believe in this spiritualism stuff, do you?
I didn't. Since my wife passed away, I don't know.
Oh, forgive me. I didn't.
Sometimes I feel she's still with me. Sometimes I just feel she's there, in the room, trying to reach me.
Well, you must be careful, Arthur. These charlatans, with all their talk about seances and contacting the dead, they prey on those most in need. They do more harm than good.
I think the worst they do is disappoint. I have to keep looking.
It's not natural to lose someone so young. But if we open the door to superstition, where does that lead? It's just chasing shadows, Arthur. When we die, we go up there. We don't stay down here.
So, yeah, he plays that really well, and I think that's a really, probably a positive part to that film, in terms of his performance, but it doesn't work for the rest of the story. And, this ending where he's reunited is just so, it's the fact is the Woman in Black is meant to devastate everyone's lives. She has done. She's done that to other people in Criffin Gifford. Why does Arthur in the Hammer version, why does he get to, have a happier end? Albeit he's dead. I know he's dead, but, he has that sort of happy resolve that he's back with his loved one, I didn't like that at all. I think the 89 version matches the novel perfectly, just that she devastates and destroys, and she will continue to do that. And that anger, that rage is frightening. This powerful force that will never stop. The idea that, I remember the idea of, when I first watched it, when he goes back to London, it'll be okay. But it's not, because she follows him. She goes, she appears in London, So it's, there's, for me, the 89 version is probably the most perfect adaptation, both in terms of the way it's written, the way it's directed, the way it's performed, the way it was produced, really. I mean, the money you can see went into set design and the locations, and, it was a perfect production, and then it just bloody disappeared for nearly 30 years.
And good actors, actors who are good at what they do. None of it felt TV. I know that's, none of it seemed like it was we'll just throw this together type thing. This is,
well, you say that, it practically was.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a short shoot, wasn't it?
Sorry, I'm going over your point there, but yeah, it is. I mean, it's performed perfectly. It's amazing actors. It's like it's been in production for months. Because the novel, the novel in the 89 version follows the same path, really. There's some minor differences regarding the family dynamics, but not huge. And I'm talking about the Drablow family. But yeah, they both follow the same path. It's the 2012 version that completely goes off on its own.
Yeah. And I mean, it's fine if you don't have the initial. If you took the 89 version out of it, if it had never been around, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. But I think when you've seen that, and I saw that first, and then, no, actually I didn't. I tell a lie. I think I saw the 2012 when it kind of first came onto, it must have been Sky or something.
Right.
So then, and I actually wasn't that fussed for it, and then saw the 89 version, was terrified, ended up with that horrible dry throat scare at the end where you're just like, oh God.
But, how did it find, when you saw the Hammer version first, is that right? Did you say that you saw the Hammer version first and then you saw the 89 version? How did that change the impact of the 89 version for you at all?
Maybe a little. I mean, I think the problem with the 2012 version is that it had been done before. Especially those kind of films around that time, there'd been a lot of remakes and reimaginings and things. There was CGI, and it just doesn't smack the way that the 89 version does.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't have and I think it doesn't have the dread. You are heartbroken for him because, as you said before, he is completely broken. He's a broken man.
Mm.
He is so devastated by his loss and his grief that, he's just functioning.
Yes.
That's
why I think Daniel Radcliffe, he really deserves a lot more credit for what he brings there. And a lot of people saying he's too young for the part. He's not. He's exactly the age that Arthur is in the novel.
Right.
Mid-20s, I think. It's so, people that claim that stuff is just a lot of nonsense. He plays it really well. He's right for the part. It's just, as well because of the changes, which was by Jane Goldman, who wrote Stardust. I think I actually I got hold of the script before the film came out. And I couldn't, I was, oh no, you wait for the film, don't read it. I couldn't, I had the script for about 4 hours and then I had to read it.
Wow.
Someone gave me a copy of the script, and and this was before it came out, and I just thought, no, don't spoil it, enjoy it when it comes out, I was like, no, and it lasted about 4 hours on the drawer before I had to go and read it. And it's an enjoyable script. I mean, it's fine, it was just bog standard, and I think going back to 89, when we looked at what they did in the 89 version, they actually, it's wrong to say they didn't do a lot, but there's not a lot of happening on screen. There's just the gradual build. And it's perfectly executed for that.
It's
never been bettered on television. I've never seen a better ghost story on television. The only other ghost story that I would put up there alongside the Woman in Black, with the Woman in Black still being at the top, is Lawrence Gordon Clark's adaptation of A Warning to the Curious from the early 70s. The BBC Ghost Story for Christmas series. That and The Woman in Black are the two perfect ghost stories that have come out of all these decades of television, for me, personally.
I've not seen it. So this is something that I need to do a little bit of exploration on, is the BBC Ghost Stories for Christmas. I have seen both versions of Whistle and I'll Come to You, and I don't know if they were Christmas. They might not have been.
No, Whistle was done in the 60s by Jonathan Miller, and no, it wasn't part of the. It's very much included in the same group now.
And I watched it at Christmas actually. But yeah, that's my only kind of experience there. So that's something that's kind of on my to-do list. It's part of my.
That's not a bad introduction though, because Jonathan Miller's Whistle is
terrifying.
It's highly regarded. Yeah, I like it. I like Michael Hordern, his performance of this bumbling mad person. At the end, he's fantastic, and it's great. It's well shot. I was down that way not long ago. I was down by that beach.
Oh no!
last summer, I think.
Did it chill you? Honestly, did you get a wee? Oh, wait a minute.
No, it was just a lovely beach. I was trying to. It was a busy day. I was already, because Warning to the Curious was already filmed, and that. Well, sorry, I say already filmed. No, it wasn't. That came after. Warning to the Curious was also filmed around that area, but two different areas, kind of either side of this beach in Whistle and I'll Come to You. So I spent my time trying to get to Warning to Curious locations, and I was running out of time by the time I got to the beach from Whistle and I'll Come to You. So I'll need to go back to Norfolk, really. Is the answer to that.
Eelmarsh House, within the 89 version, feels like a character in itself. How do you think that isolation amplifies the fear for the viewer?
Well, it's cut off from the mainland to start with. Once the tide's in, you're stuck. You can't get off that island. So you're stuck at the house, and you'll be stuck there until the tide goes back out again. So the causeway is a character. It's this, it's part of this landscape that dictates to you when you're going to cross, not man telling nature what to do. Again, that might sort of, you're talking about folk horror earlier on. There's elements of that again, sort of tying into this fact that in terms of landscape, what's underneath the earth, or what's within our landscapes, we're not in control of necessarily, and things like the tide, we're not.
Is this it? The causeway?
Yeah.
It's got a name. 9 Lives Causeway, they call it. Like what the cat's got. It's what you need out here. Fred?
Seamist.
That's a foreigner's name.
It was so quick.
That's it is.
So once you're out there, you're stuck. So you are actually physically isolated from the outside world when you're there. The house itself is large, it's empty, got lots of rooms. Herbert Wise's direction is masterful when you're first entering into Eilmarsh House and it's one of my favourite sequences, and again it's a sequence where nothing particularly happens, but it's an exploration of the house and it gives you, the audience, the geography of the house. And then Arthur goes from door to door looking in each room. It's a series of shots looking in different rooms until he gets to a door that he can't open. And it's locked, steadfast. It's the only door that's locked. He can't get through. And he just leaves the door and walks away, and the camera stays on the door.
Just that, it's just that dread.
Yeah, again, it's a brilliant build-up of dread. Yeah, what is behind that door? And you're not told immediately. And it's left, it's again, it's not only is the house isolating, not only is it large, not only is he is on his own in it, but there's also a room that you can't get into. We've no idea what's behind that door. And then, of course, when the hauntings start, we get the noises from behind the door.
Hello?
So yes, the house itself is a character, very much so, and it is in the novel. It's gothic in the novel, but the 89 version gives it complete lease of life. And again, it was a house that was unoccupied at the time. It still stands today, and it's very much the same today. If you're going inside the house, which I've been invited to do, but I've been shown pictures of the house as it is today. Staircase is still there, the upstairs landing, it's all still looks the same, and it's not far from London. They found the house at the last minute. It was owned by an Australian couple who were actually living in Australia at the time, so weren't using the house, so they got full reign of the house itself, which is at Stanlake Manor House.
Wow.
Which is Stanlake Park, which offers wedding venues and it sells wine now. But you can go and visit there. Well, you can't visit the house, it's a private house. But yes, it's still very much there today, and it looks much the same. It's obviously been modernised in several different ways, but yeah, the main structure of the house is the same. You can also see it in Midsummer Murders. It appears I was speaking to the owner of the house, and he said that Midsummer Murders were done there as well. I think it was called, it's rather hokey, but it's a vintage murder, it was called, because it is set on a wine estate.
Oh, wow.
And the house, you get to see bits of inside the house, and again, if you have a look at that episode, there's not a lot, but I think you do see the staircase. And yeah, so if you look for a vintage murder, Midsummer Murders, you'll see the very same house and the interior. Pretty much probably as it looks today, really. Yeah.
And do you plan to go? Is there plans to go?
Yeah, I hope so. It's I've definitely been invited, and it's just more really trying to fit in when I can actually travel. Being in Scotland, it's right down at the bottom of the country. Really, well, not right at the bottom, but quite a fair distance down. So I need
it's a big trek.
It is a trek, but yes, I would love to. Yeah, it's if you have a look, this really excited me, and this maybe gives you an idea of who I am as a person. But he sent me a picture of his living room, which is the room that Arthur uses in the production of The Woman in Black. He uses the room as his kind of study, his kind of bed area. It's where he lights the fire. The fireplace around is exactly the same, this kind of marble effect. And then if you look to the left of the fireplace, in the production, there's a crack in the panelling on the wall. Lots of different panelling, and there's a crack on one of them, and that crack's still there, and I got really excited about that. So
that's brilliant.
Yes, yeah.
Geeking out for geeking out for that crack.
Yes, look out for the crack, everyone.
Yeah,
that's different levels to that, isn't it? But how to bore your listeners by talking about cosmetic.
I think if our listeners are listening to this, then they are probably on the same wavelength as us and appreciate those little details, those little kind of Easter eggs that
I've got lots
that are always fun. They're always so much fun to spot, aren't they?
Yes, I've got lots of Easter eggs, lots of information that I'm not even giving away on this podcast.
No, because people have to buy the book.
They have to buy the book whenever I
buy the book.
Which I might just say, because there is another book coming out now, which I'm very excited about. At the same time, a bit like, what about mines? But no, there's an academic book coming out in February 2025, so this year, end of February, start of March, I think, under the Devil's Advocate series, done by University of Liverpool, on The Woman in Black, 1989. So there is finally a book coming out, which is the whole reason why I wanted to write one, was because there was nothing out there about it. So yes, there is a book coming out. So my own project, I'm going to review what's coming out, and I'm going to push mine back, and we'll see what happens. But I'm potentially looking at 2029, which will be the 40th anniversary of The Woman in Black. So
wow,
we'll see how things are. But yes, look out for the book, because that's also exciting. We're finally getting something published about this drama, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Moving on towards more chat around the book and the book's themes and its content, and really kind of tapping into your expertise and motivation for writing the book, is, we've already discussed that absolutely one of the standout features of the 89 adaptation is its sound design. Are you able to talk about how that sound is used to create tension and fear? We mentioned the silence of the graveyard, and we've mentioned the scream, Pauline's absolutely blood-chilling scream. Are there any other specific moments within the film where the sound design really kind of stands out for you?
Yeah, I think Miriam Margolyes is I don't know if anyone knows this, it's certainly not published out there, so this might be a bit of an exclusive. But Miriam Margolyes is the voice of Mrs. Drabble, and she's not credited.
No way!
I found out that entirely by accident that it was her. And I actually spoke to Miriam, and I was trying to basically just get confirmation of the source. I've got a very reliable source that told me it was Miriam Margolyes, but she's not credited. And I was like, wow, and then I started to listen, and then it sounds like Miriam Margolyes. And so I contacted Miriam thinking I'll not get a reply anytime soon, but we'll see what she says. She replied in about 2 hours with a lovely email that went on. If you can imagine Miriam talking, just imagine this email coming in. She was lovely and gracious, very funny lady. But at the end of it, of course I can't bloody remember 30 years ago if I did it or not. It probably was me, and that was, but that was pretty much the response. But yes, Miriam Margolyes is the voice of Mrs. Drablow, and it's really down through confirmation from a source and elimination of other people who I thought it may have been.
And worse, she has found ways to make me fear their calamity in the marshes. Last night,
a lot of people thought it was Fiona Walker, the wife of Herbert Wise, who's also in the film as Mrs. Daly, Samuel Daly's wife. They thought that Fiona had done the ADR work for the phonograph, but no, it wasn't. It was Miriam Margolyes.
Wow.
So,
well, there you go, folks. There's an exclusive, there's an Easter egg. That is a fairly...
And you're getting no more Easter eggs until But yeah, the sound design of that, the crackling, because that's not a wax cylinder. That is ADR work. That's done afterwards. I love that. You can hear this, this kind of static and the crackling of a wax cylinder going round. So that's great. That's like that's another ghost, really. Mrs. Drablow is speaking to us now from beyond the grave through a wax cylinder. So that's another ghostly sound, really. It's
absolutely. And like you say, that line is just, it's beyond terrifying, isn't it? The 4am line.
Oh, there's better ones that are in the script that never got recorded.
Really?
Yeah, honestly. There's one, oh dear, I wish I'd had a look at the script again before I'd done this. No, there's one that's really chilling. When I read it on the page, I was that actually gave me goosebumps, and it's similar to that, that night she did not come till 4 a.m, then it was back, it was the same tone about it, and it was, it just gave me the shivers. There's a few, I think Nigel Kneale did an entire separate page of phonograph dialogues, particularly just a page of dialogue for that phonograph. So, yeah.
So he was a real visionary. Obviously knew, as you mentioned earlier, the power of technology and the how that can convey so much for an audience with actually it just being a very simple, a kind of it's really just a spoken diary, isn't it? But it is.
It's just, it's the way the dialogue is. Yeah, Nigel Kneale's dialogue is fantastic. The dialogue from Samuel, the dialogue of everybody in that, no matter how small the parts are, everyone has something that's meaningful in what they say. It's not.
Yes, nothing's wasted, is it?
There isn't anything wasted at all. It's completely perfect. It's absolutely just immaculate. And Bernard Hepton has some great lines, when Arthur finally confronts him at the end in Eilmar's house and plays the phonograph back and when Arthur asks, what does Mrs. Drablow mean? And he kind of resigns himself. He's holding the secret all this time, and then finally he just turns, he's, don't you? And the use of, Jeanette Humphrey's child being called a buntling child, a bastard child.
I think I've found her.
Who?
The woman I saw. That's her. It's what she must have been once.
It's hot in here.
I know those eyes. I saw them yesterday.
What else?
Mrs. Drablow had no children. Instead, she adopted one. It's all in here. Child named as Nathaniel. Infant son of Janet Goss, spinster.
Goss.
Now, who was she?
You know, don't you?
Well, my kin, Mrs. Drablow says here.
She was the sister.
The younger sister?
She had a bantling.
A what?
A bastard child.
They tried to cover it up?
Well, I had to. Respectable people. We all knew, though. I was only a lad, but I had the tale. Look at him. Happy family.
Not for long.
Death certificates.
Same date. Nathaniel Drablow, adopted son of Mrs. Alice Drablow, aged 6 years. Death by suffocation and drowning. And Janet Goss, spinster, aged 35. In the marsh?
Yes, had to be.
What else did people say?
She tried to get him back. Just for herself.
Well, she was his mother.
She was desperate. She ran about the streets, shouting.
You saw it?
Well, at that age, you try not to.
And in the end, she stole him, got hold of a pony and trap, got him into it whether he wanted to go or not. It's what happened, I've heard it. When he screams for his mother, who's he screaming for?
Buntland's quite an archaic word now. You don't hear that.
I am not familiar with that word at all.
It was a buntland, bastard child. And it was just, the other thing that does with that dialogue is it puts me right into this rural community in the northeast of England, which I'm assuming would be Yorkshire or something like that. And it's, I'm right there because the language that's used is that sort of archaic language that we don't hear today. Of course, we don't hear bastard child today, or we shouldn't hear it. But, beyond that, we had Buntland child. He was a Buntland child.
Wow.
Yeah. So Nigel Kneale was just, he understood society, understood people, he understood languages, he understood traditions and cultures. And,
And was it just fiction that he wrote?
Yes. And I'll be corrected, I'm sure by people who know better if I've got that wrong. But yes, he wrote short stories in his early life, progressed to radio for BBC and then on to TV drama for Quatermass. He was entirely fictional, I think. But do forgive me, folks, if I've got that wrong. I don't think it was, in terms of Nigel Kneale's work, he worked through to about 93, 94, I think. One of his last pieces was a really, really moving and well done episode of Kavanagh QC with John Thaw, covering essentially a Holocaust story. So very wide-ranging body of work. People kind of group them into sci-fi and horror and I think, from what I understand, he would absolutely abhor that. He didn't want to be classed as that kind of. But he wrote in genre. He wrote genre, but he wouldn't want to be pigeonholed into any particular class of writing. I don't think. But
and hugely influential. I mean, his reach is. He's mentioned by, so many people who...
But John Carpenter, Prince of Darkness. Okay, John Carpenter, one of his characters' name's Quatermass.
Yes.
So there's influences there. Nigel Kneale, he famously, I don't think I'm saying anything new here, he hated Doctor Who. I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who, but he hated it because Doctor Who ripped off half of his stories. There's a lot of stories, really, really good Doctor Who stories that you can have a look at, and then you actually see that they're directly from, Quatermass Experiment or something else. Just what an amazing writer. And one that I'm so happy I've come to appreciate more. I really didn't know much about him before these last 5, 6, 7 years, really. I mean, I knew of him for, a couple of things that I had watched and was interested in. I didn't realise his body of work and just the quality of it.
Absolutely. So I guess then it's no surprise that that it was BAFTA nominated, and particularly for its sound. And what's your thoughts around that? I mean, obviously you think that recognition is completely deserved.
Absolutely. I mean, Woman in Black wasn't afforded a huge budget. It was actually given money. There was money left over. It was a project that fell through at ITV towards mid 1988, something like that. And then it was executive producer Ted Childs, and Chris Burt, both quite renowned for television work. Inspector Morse, Cadfael, Boone. Don't know if anyone remembers Boone. And if you have a look at The Woman in Black, there's the landlord of the Gifford Arms is David Dacre, who is one of the main characters in Boone, with Michael Elphick and Neil Morrissey. Lots of connections really with the sort of ITV world and central television as it was at that time. It wasn't given a lot of money. It was given essentially leftover money for an abandoned project. And then it went into production fairly quickly I think I've worked out between around about October through to the end of February, October 1988 through to the end of February 1989. Nigel Kneale wrote the first draft of the script in November, famously writing it in 10 days and then forgetting to submit it. Or I think his agent had asked not to submit it too soon because it would be like, you've not really worked on it. And then he forgot to do it. So it almost didn't happen. The actual script never arrived. And if the script hadn't arrived, they would have bothered, I don't think they would have done anything with it. So, there was a close moment, I think, where it was, it almost didn't happen. But yeah, BAFTA nominated for Best Design, John Bunker, Best Makeup, Christine Alsop, Best Film Sound, which was Tony Daw and John Downer, and at the time was a trainee, Orrin Beaton, who now he's currently working in major Hollywood, films. Orrin Beaton, that was his first job. He got it through, I think, a sort of an apprenticeship sound design program that was set up in the 80s.
What a start.
He got the apprenticeship through. It was to specifically help people of ethnic background gain employment in the industry, recognising at the time that it wasn't really versatile enough, or it wasn't diverse enough. Not versatile, diverse enough. So Orrin Beaton got in, and that was his first job. And he's done Skyfall. When I spoke to him, he was just finishing Star Wars or something. It was a Star Wars television spin-off that he was doing. So yeah, and then finally television music, Best Original Television Music, which is Rachel Portman, and she is now big in Hollywood as well. She composes major Hollywood films and television.
Wow.
So yeah, design, makeup, sound, and television music were the 4 BAFTA nominations. And incredible for a drama that was given limited money, limited time, and a credit to everyone involved, actually, I think, as a result.
Absolutely. And a genre piece as well.
Yeah.
Not always recognised.
No, it isn't always recognised. That's a very interesting point, Emma. Yeah. Genre work, certainly not now, but less so then, didn't really get recognised at award seasons. This did. So it had a major impact. No matter, it might have disappeared for decades, it might not have been seen, but when it was broadcast, it had an effect on those who saw it, and it certainly had an impact on the industry. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me into kind of the next area that I wanted to kind of chat to you about would be about the legacy of that 1989 adaptation. Because it disappeared for such a long time, did you feel that it was then overshadowed by the play and then the Hammer remake?
Yes and no. The play existed before the television adaptation. The play started in 1987 in Scarborough, adapted by Stephen Malchett. And went on to have a long-running success in London, the Fortune Theatre in Covent Garden, where it ran for, in fact, it only just closed there a year or so ago, I think, just after COVID. So the play existed before, so I think the play is a very different narrative from the novel in the Hammer version, and it works because it's a theatre play. and it's a two-hand piece, really. It's two actors. So it's a very different model. So I don't think it was overshadowed by that. The fact that it wasn't seen for years, and then Hammer brought out their own version, and this 89 version still wasn't being recognised, it was absolutely overshadowed. And it was overshadowed by the fact that Hammer and the producers of the film had suppressed the 89 version so that it wouldn't conflict with the 2012 version. I'd wondered for a lot of years why there wasn't when a new film comes out, if there's been an earlier version, they'll bring out that version on DVD or something around the same time. I thought something like that would happen. It never did, and I was annoyed at that as well. There was no recognition, and this was a huge success for Hammer. This is one of the most money-making box office horror films of British cinema ever, really, was that Hammer version of Women in Black. So it was hugely successful.
It was its relaunch, wasn't it? It was the the film that kind of relaunched?
Yeah, they got Daniel Radcliffe deliberately to target the audience. And they reduced the rating. They cut it in Britain. It would have been a 15 had it not been cut. But they brought it down to a 12A, so I'm basically under 12, i.e. Harry Potter fans.
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, there's Harry Potter fans of all ages. In fact, I know someone who will kick my backside for saying. So, I'm very sorry. That was I misspoke there, but certainly people under the age of 12 could go, and they would, obviously, because they've been fans of the Harry Potter films, they would go because Daniel Radcliffe was the main star. So he was
a pull, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was a major pull to bring him into a genre that perhaps wouldn't have been as intriguing for younger audiences at that time. And yeah, it gave Hammer the launch it needed. But sadly, even beyond that, for years, Hammer decided that they wouldn't let the rights to the Women in Black go until much later, until 2021. Was it 2020? 2020, sorry, when it was finally allowed to be released on Blu-ray and remastered by Network Video, who are sadly no longer around anymore, but they restored both the camera A and camera B negatives, and we have it in restored high definition, so it looks the best it's ever been. It looks better than it did when it was broadcast.
Really?
Yeah. So I think, to answer your question, I think there was a lot of overshadowing because it was suppressed, not because it was a lesser production or it couldn't compete with other versions. It just wasn't allowed to be seen officially.
And do you think that kind of adds to why it still kind of resonates so strongly with fans still today, because it wasn't available to us? It was almost this kind of mystical.
Yeah, it felt like that.
Product.
Felt like that for me, between 1989 and 1994 when I got to see it again. Those intervening years is a long time back in those days. There was no internet. There was no way to access any material on it, really. So it kind of just remained in your head. And then it started.
Did you worry that it didn't exist?
No, I knew it existed. I think my whole family knew it definitely existed.
Yeah, you're like, no, we all lived and breathed it. It was real.
Definitely happened. But yeah, it was sad. I always found that sad. And I found it sad that Nigel Kneale in his lifetime never got to see it re-released the way it happened now. Nigel Kneale, I think, passed away in 2006. And it was his last genre piece, really. Is one of his greatest genre pieces for me, and it was his last, and it just got completely tucked away into a box and unseen for years, So.
And that's an additional tragedy, isn't it? That's the other tragedy of the Women in Black, is that it was suppressed, because there are so many fans.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, Pauline Moran talks about, she still gets letters about it. She still gets letters on that particular role. I mean, she's done many roles, but particularly Miss Lemon in Poirot. She's David Suchy's secretary in Poirot for many years. So, she's done a lot of work, but she's remembered most fondly because of The Woman in Black. I think it's important to convey that she is seen 5 times in the 89 version.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pauline's screen time is less than 10 minutes. So she isn't in it, but you feel that she's in the whole film.
She's just ever present.
Ever present because, I think because of Pauline Moran's performance, which, let's not forget, it's not a speaking part. She has to perform without speaking. That's quite a feat to do and to have an impact.
Yes.
Herbert Wise kept her at a distance. He's on record as saying that he deliberately didn't want to show her up close. Just so you had I guess that maybe ties into traditions of M.R. James, these apparitions are seen slightly out of the corner of our eye. We don't quite see them clearly. I think Herbert Wise wanted to do the same idea with his direction of The Woman in Black, but you'll notice that each scene she gets gradually closer to Arthur.
Yes.
Until that moment.
Mm-hmm.
When she's very close to him.
She is there. They are nose to nose.
And it seems to be choreographed like that. Each scene she's at the back of the church, then she's in the churchyard, slightly closer, a bit of movement in the churchyard. And then he goes out to an island, a completely different environment, and he sees her again. At this point, because it's a different environment, we know there's something not right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same figure in this entirely different environment. And she's moving deliberately towards him.
Yes.
There's actually a stride there. She's making for him, which is quite frightening. And then the next time we see her, she's hovering over his bed, screaming. So, yeah, I think it was very much choreographed that way. And then the final shot in the lake, where she's standing on the lake, which is it's a park in Enfield in London. It's Groveland Park, which looks very much the same. Boughton Lake is still there. If you have a look, the tree lines are very similar. They're just much the same. And then she's standing on water. This kind of uncanny visual, but she's there, and she causes that final tragedy.
Again, a scream. That scream is
Claire Hallman, who plays Arthur's wife. It's her turn to scream.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's some scream. I love that you mentioned about the very first time that we see her, because I love that it's kind of, in that scene, it's ambiguous. She could very well just be a mourner.
Yeah.
At the back of the church, was just there, and then he turns away, and then she's gone. And that is there's nothing overtly supernatural there at all, is there?
No.
But like you say, as soon as she is situated away from that church and the graveyard, we just know. Don't we? And her facial expressions are amazing.
Oh, she's hating him.
Yeah, it is such vengeance and anger, and it's, I mean, an absolute masterclass by Pauline, that she conveys so much and says not a word.
Not a word. Yeah, it's incredible, really. And that was shot out on Ossie Island in Essex, which has the causeway. The causeway itself is used in Women in Black, the Hammer version as well. It's the same causeway in Ireland. But yeah, they shot that out on Ossie Island, and in freezing cold weather of March 1989. She's actually wrapped in cling film underneath that dress. Gave quite a performance, given the fact it must have been absolutely freezing. And then the tide came in as well. And they had to get the boat back out to the mainland. But by the time we got to their own boat, they discovered that an oar was missing, so we only had one oar for her and the crew to try and get back to the mainland, and they just kept going in circles, and she was terrified they were going out into sea. The mainland. But they made it back. Yeah, not the easiest of conditions, sort of like early year wintry conditions to shoot out in such an exposed landscape, because Ossie Island's completely flat. But there we go. She did that under all that sort of duress, really, her expressions are fantastic. That scene, that famous scene, that just the eyes and the anger and the rage that comes from her is incredible. Yeah.
And it's just the most subtle of movements. It's a mouth twitch, or it's a narrowing of the eyes, and it just, so powerful. So powerful.
He doesn't belong there. He doesn't belong there, and he doesn't, the locals don't allow him to feel like he belongs. It's just very, how much more can you be oppressed by a community? And
punished.
Punished, yes. By a community and its ghost.
Sort out all her papers and make an inventory. Will you come over with me and show me where I can find all?
No, I can't spare the time. I have some auctions coming up.
If you got a clerk I could borrow for a day or two.
I'm on my own. I'm not in a big way of business, not like your City of London firms. Now, here are the keys. I've arranged for a man to drive you at 1 o'clock. His name's Keckwick. He's quite dependable.
Can't I walk?
There's no road, Mr. Kidd.
Then how
it's just a kind of causeway across the marsh. You can use it only at low tide. Otherwise, it's underwater.
I see.
Keckwick knows the tides. Now, you must respect them, Mr. Kidd. They come in fast. You could get swept away. Some people have been.
Poor Arthur.
And he's so sweet. He's such a lovely guy. He's a loving husband. He's a devoted father.
Mm-hmm. And he's kindly. I mean, that Adrian Rollins, that was his second performance on television. I think his first lead performance on television was that film. And he gives that character just such we like him instantly. I mean, when he comes in, he's trying to appease the clerks in the office with their nonsense, but he's also got you can see he's a man of, he's very aware of hierarchy, and he has to behave himself as well, and he has to show that authoritative management figure, and then Mr. Girdler, the man that's been gassed during the war, he's looking for compensation. He spends time with him and assures him that he'll get his compensation. He'll never get his compensation. But Arthur has this ideal quality about him that he just wants to do good. So we like him instantly. And he's bullied and prodded by his employer.
Who is this person with the appalling sniff? A client of yours?
Yes, he was gassed.
What?
In the trenches, he was in a gas attack, and he can't help it. It got worse, so I'm trying to get him more money.
Sit down, Mr. Kidd. Do you see yourself as having a future with this practice? A partnership, perhaps, ultimately?
I hope so, sir.
Then, sir, you must learn to take yourself seriously. I've watched you chattering with the junior clerks. That won't do.
I didn't realize.
You must cultivate authority.
I know.
Take a look at yourself. What's that on your sleeve, there?
That was the baby last night. I think she'd sponge that off. My wife, that is.
Mr. Kidd, to have saddled yourself with a wife and family at this stage in your career. You know my opinion. I shan't repeat it. But now I have to trust you with an important assignment.
Oh?
Be assured I'd have dealt with it myself, but for other commitments.
What is it?
You know the Drablow estate?
Well, heard of it.
It's been my personal concern, of course. With this firm for half a century, Mr. Drablow was a China trader. He died out east many years ago, and we've looked after things ever since. Now his widow has just passed away, aged 72. Now, I want you to attend the funeral.
Of course.
The day after tomorrow.
Where will it be? In London?
No, it's at a place called Crithin Gifford.
You've saddled yourself with a wife and child, just being mocked and browbeaten for having a family and not concentrating on this career and potentially being a partner in the firm, which is the carrot that's dangled in order to get him out to Eelmarsh House, because Mr. Sweetman won't go anywhere near it. And we come to learn that he knows full well where he's sending Arthur.
Finally, what is your hope that the readers will take away from Sound Haunting?
Well, my hope, or the main ambition for it, was for it to be heard again. And funnily enough, without me actually doing anything in terms of releasing a book, since I started in 2019, it's now been re-released on Blu-ray. And is now available by a different distributor on Blu-ray, so you can still buy it. It's on Prime Video, so you can access it. So you can see it widely now. When I started this, it was still, off the radar. It wasn't able to be seen officially. So that's one thing that's happened. I wanted that to happen. And
you summoned it.
Well, it happened without my involvement, but it's happened, and I'm happy for it. And the other thing was just to have an appreciation for what it was. So, in terms of television drama, because in the 1980s, there wasn't really anything supernatural on television in the 1980s. There might have been serials or dramas that had supernatural elements in them, or brought the supernatural into them, but there weren't directly anything too supernatural. I think we had Shades of Darkness in 1983, which was done by Granada, so that would have been shown on ITV. Which featured, it was an anthology ghost story series. I think it had about 6 different stories. That was 1983. That had an early appearance by June Brown, who went on to be Doc Cotton in EastEnders. And then we had in fact, it's only ever been shown once in 1985, Time for Murder, which was another Granada ITV series that was essentially a series of thrillers that were really pretty poorly done, to be fair, but I think they used the same set in every different story. It didn't have the money for a different set, so there was that.
Oh, so it wasn't deliberate.
No, it was basically the same set, but they redressed it, but you could see it was the same thing. And that had a few chilling moments. That's one of my scary moments from my childhood. I remember one episode that I'll not go into just now, but yeah, there was a frightening moment out of one of those episodes. Had a really good cast. It had people like Patricia Hodge, writers like Antonia Fraser. So, I mean, it was quite, there was a lot of good people involved in that, but it was serious, really. And then 1989 really was The Woman in Black. That was the first, the supernatural stuff had disappeared. It came back a bit in the 90s. Had Chiller on ITV, which adapted some stories. You remember Chiller? Yeah, 1990.
No, I'm not thinking about Chiller.
Oh, right.
That terrified me. I can't. I'll need to have a read of the episodes. I think I may have actually blocked it out. But there was
a few. One of Stephen Gallagher's stories, Prophecy, was done. It was adapted under Chiller. I mean, it was quite an effective series. I don't rate it, it's not my favourite series, but I mean, it was effective. Then, of course, we had America or Canada rather, with the X-Files. So supernatural stuff started to come back in vogue in the in the 90s, but it was very, I think, almost Americanized, really. It wasn't any of the sort of British traditional storytelling. So I hope that people sort of realise that it was a bit of a final hurrah of the ghost story of Christmas, if you like. Mm-hmm. Although this adaptation isn't set at Christmas. But it was a final hurrah for Nigel Kneale in terms of his genre work and in terms of television showing a ghost story. That didn't happen again in the sort of British tradition until 2005. Really, we had the ghost stories of Christmas come back. Ghost Stories for Christmas, come back in 2005 for a brief period, 2006 and 2007, and then we had a break again. It was quite a oddity in the landscape of changing television. You know, we were going from old time television quiz shows, variety shows, dramas, through to reality shows, more, you know, sort of light entertainment that sort of introduced into the 90s, and then ITV also, you know, they dissolved all their regional companies, so Yorkshire Television, Thames, London Weekend Television in the early 90s all became grouped under ITV PLC. So, you know, there was a loss of the regional competition of output. So changing television landscape as well. So I suppose, changing television landscape, the art of the ghost story for television, which has never been bettered. This is the amazing work of Nigel Kneale in adapting one of the best adaptations of Susan Hill's book. Cast and crew, absolutely phenomenal. It's something to behold, and it's still something that stands up today. If you look at television from the 80s, there's maybe some television from the 80s that are dated quite badly. Women in Black still stands like a period piece today. You know, you can still watch it today and it hasn't lost any of its impact. It's incredible.
No, none.
Absolutely incredible.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Scream, and a huge thanks to Robert for sharing his brilliant insights into The Woman in Black. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share the podcast. We'd love for you to join us again as we continue to delve into the chilling world of horror cinema and television. You can find us on Instagram at Beyond the Scream Podcast and on Blue Sky at Beyond Scream Pod. We'd love for you to get in touch, share your thoughts, suggestions, or just let us know what's been keeping you up at night. We'll be back soon with even more terror to explore.